Welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio, where truth equals reality, and truth is often stranger than fiction.
Hello everyone, welcome to Paranormal Palace Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man, and joining me today is going to be David Weatherly, and he has a book out called The Black-Eyed Children. And I've heard about this, but I don't have any in-depth knowledge. From the pictures I've seen online, I'd say they look like a cross between a human and extraterrestrial, or some people might say human and demon, and I'm not sure, unless David Weatherly knows more than I do, if anybody knows for sure if they could be a mixture of both, or, exactly what. And he's going to be discussing this here material in this book at the upcoming 2012 Paranormal Summit being hosted by Anthony Sanchez, June the 16th and 17th, which is this Saturday and Sunday, I believe. Let me double check my count. Yes, 16th and 17th is this Saturday and Sunday. And tickets, I think, are still on sale. If you want to go to his website, just scroll down below the show description and below the chat window, below the player, and right in the middle of the page, Strange Lights Publishing 2012 UFO Paranormal Summit, sacufocon.com, and click that banner. It'll take you over there. You can learn more about tickets, speakers, anything you need to know about it. You can learn about it. And tonight, we're going to find out from David about him and his participation. Like, is he going to do anything other than the Black-Eyed Children? Is he just going to have picture slides, videos, workshops, or exactly what he's going to be doing. And we're going to take this here show from there. Before we get started, I want to remind everybody that since we don't, since we're being heard at Shoutcast, YouTube, and other locations, if you want to join us live in chat, it's www.paranormalpalace.com. If you want to learn more about David and his book, you can go to www.mysteriousunivers.org/2012/the-black-eyed-children-reviewed. And it's got a real nice description there in his book, of his book, and what he covers in that. Now, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to move this show right along and get David on here with us and let him give you an idea what got his interest in the Black-Eyed Children. David, I want to thank you for coming on my show today, and I want to thank you in advance for what you're going to teach me in an area I have very little knowledge in.
Hey, thanks for having me, Royce. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you here. And, this is a topic that, I've heard it mentioned 2, 3, 4 times in the last 10 years, but never, had a chance to delve into it. So I'm really happy to see you here because I finally get to talk to somebody who has done some in-depth research into it. But to give a start off in it, why don't you tell us what attracted you to this particular area of study?
Sure. I've always researched the paranormal. I've been actively researching and investigating for over 35 years now. And in the late 90s, I started hearing a few stories about these black-eyed children, black-eyed kids, as they're also called. Sometimes you'll see the acronym BEK, short for black-eyed kids. And at the time, there were a handful of stories that had surfaced on the Internet in the early days of Internet forums and chats. And they seemed like, they were very interesting, but they seemed like they could be in the realm of urban legend. The stories it was very difficult to get in touch with people who had actually posted the stories, of course. And being interested in all spectrums of the paranormal, I kind of paid attention to it, but also set it aside because I thought, okay, it's sort of interesting, but there's not a whole lot here at this point. That all changed in the early 2000s when I met a gentleman who had actually had an experience with the Black-Eyed Children. His name was Paul. His story is documented pretty thoroughly in the book because he really was sort of the impetus that made me go forward and start researching this strange topic more. Paul was one of these guys that was a complete skeptic about anything paranormal. And he was also one of those people that never hesitated to remind you that he was a complete skeptic and thought it was all kind of a joke. But you know how it is with some of those people. Sometimes they're doing that because they actually do have a story of their own that they're either nervous about or uneasy to some degree, and they need to get it out there. And after knowing Paul for some time and, you know, him understanding that I was serious about my field of study and wasn't going to make a joke of him, essentially, I ran into him one afternoon, and he asked if he could sit down and eat with me, and he kind of opened up and started telling me his story. Now, this gentleman was a prison guard. He was well over 6 feet tall. He was a bodybuilder, a martial artist. This was a tough man who had seen, you know, things that most human beings just never see, you know, brawls and shankings in prison, and you know, had really had his life on the line a lot of times. He started telling me this story about encountering these two children at his home who they literally terrified him. And he just couldn't come to grips with what had happened. This is sort of the MO for these kids, for anyone who doesn't know. These beings, for lack of a better word, they appear to be children. The general age range is from about 8 to 12 or 13 years old. That's where we get the most reports. They show up on people's doorsteps. They appear in parking lots at people's vehicles. They've shown up at hotel rooms, boats. I've got all kinds of accounts of these kids showing up, and they attempt to gain entrance. Now, they don't force their way. What they do is they try to convince the person to invite them in. And this, of course, harkens back to classic demon or vampire lore, where the entity can't cross the threshold unless they receive an invitation. So this is indeed what happened to Paul. These two kids showed up on his doorstep, and they seemed to be normal kids at first. They were standing on the doorstep. They were wearing jeans and hoodies, just very bland colored clothing, and they were sort of looking down at the steps, and they started saying these strange phrases to him, you know, hey, we just thought we'd stop in for a while. And Paul had a child of his own, but his child was much younger. His wife and child were out of town. These two kids are insisting and trying to gain entrance and saying, you know, just ask us in. And he begins to grow nervous, and he's trying to engage these kids, and he's saying, oh, you know, you guys must have the wrong house. I don't know you. He knew everyone in his neighborhood who lived in a suburban neighborhood. And as he's trying to engage these kids, he's growing more and more uneasy. He moves forward because these kids are getting just very insistent. And they say, well, we'll come in anyway. And he moves forward to try to get a better look at these kids. That's when one of them looks up directly at him, and he realizes this kid has solid black eyes. Not just the pupil, the sclera, the entire eye is solid black.
Almost like they have no whites or no colors other than the black.
No whites. Yeah, no whites, no color in the eye at all, just solid black, much like you see the depictions of the alien grays, just a solid black eye. And Paul's level of really panic almost at that point just reaches a stage where he slams the door on these kids and leans against the door, and he realizes he's nervous, he's shaking. He walks across the room. Once he gets across the room, he hears this rapping noise, and he turns around, and there's the face of one of these kids peering in the side panel of the door, the little glass panel, knocking on the window. And that's a creepy image in and of itself, but Paul's, you know, nervous energy at this point kind of shifted, and he felt like he got a little bit of control of himself, but he just felt a big burst of anger. And he literally ran into his bedroom, got his firearm, and came running back out, because he told me the only thing he could think of at that moment was that he was going to scare those kids like they had scared him.
I bet that would scare them if they were normal kids.
If they were normal kids, yeah. But in the few seconds it took for him to dash into his room, grab that gun, and run back, fling that door open, these kids had vanished. He searched outside, up and down the street, all around his yard. There was no sign at all of these children. They had completely disappeared. You know, he asked neighbors. No one else had witnessed them. And this is typical of these encounters, too. These children, they often vanish very, very quickly. And, you know, they just, they don't behave, obviously, like normal children would. And Paul, for a long time, you know, he still, to tell you the truth, wrestles with this whole encounter and the fact that something that he couldn't understand caused him to feel complete fear. And this is not a man used to feeling fear.
Yeah, I know that feeling. I mean, as a rule of thumb, I don't know, I'm a weird man. I mean, you know, I get in front of any man or almost any situation and fear don't even cross my mind, but let a wasp fly past me and I freak out. But still, you're talking about something with eyes like that. That's got to just spook you.
Right.
And right. I mean, they give me the willies.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it seems to be the unique combination of things. I mean, after studying so many of these encounters, it's obvious that there's much more going on here than just the appearance of the eyes. Obviously, it's a very creepy look, but quite honestly, you know, somebody like Paul is not going to terrify him. So there's something else that's occurring when these kids encounter people, whether it's something akin to, you know, like an infrasound, or whether it's something that's being done on a purely mental level, because a lot of people that encounter these kids, they swear that these children are attempting some type of mind control. And indeed, in the encounters, what you find a lot of the times is that the children, they only have a handful of phrases in any given encounter that they seem to repeat over and over and over again. And it's in a very monotone voice. I had one interesting woman I interviewed who had actually utilized hypnotherapy in order to quit smoking. And she told me that, you know, years ago when she had utilized this technique, she went to a hypnotist, and she had trouble the first couple of sessions being put into a hypnotic state. And, you know, the therapist explained, well, that's the case with some people. Some people find it difficult, but we'll, you know, help you work through it. So she got to the point with this therapist where she was able to go into a hypnotic trance, and it was successful for her. She stopped smoking because of the treatment. But years later, she turns around and she has an encounter with these black-eyed children. And she reported to me that when these kids started talking and saying the same phrases, she said that she started having the same feeling that she had when she went into trance working with this hypnotherapist.
You know, has there been any history anywhere that you heard of these black-eyed children actually doing any kind of harm or any kind of abductions or any of the things that, say, like the Greys are known for?
There haven't been any abductions, but when we get into the realm of sort of a deeper level of contact with these kids, we find a lot of different things. There's an entire chapter in the book devoted to one particular encounter where one of these kids was invited in, and it did not turn out well at all.
Oh, really?
There are some other occasions where people have encounters with these kids, and very soon afterwards they'll have someone in their family will pass away, or, you know, some people believe that these children are some type of omen. Some people feel that they're basically bearers of some kind of ill fortune, because there are quite a few accounts of people that have encountered the kids and then, you know, had a whole string of misfortunes that befall them afterwards.
Okay, so they wouldn't really have the misfortune while they were present, but it'd be like a bad luck charm dropped behind after when they left. In other words, you might say.
Right. Yeah, that's what it seems like.
Okay. Well, now, I was looking at some of these pictures that's on Google and other places, and the first thing I thought of, and of course I'm inexperienced and I haven't actually researched it, but it reminded me an awful lot with my just being inexperienced of like a crossbreed between a gray alien and a human.
Sure, and that's probably out of all the theories to explain the kids. And let me just back up for a second and say, these children. One of the things that's really fascinating about this topic is that they actually share things in common with a very wide range of paranormal phenomena. There are a lot of similarities with demonic or vampires, demonic entities, undead. They share traits with ghosts, with trickster type of entities, and, of course, what you're referring to, what's considered an alien hybrid. And that's probably the most popular theory to explain what these kids actually are. We all know that there are an incredibly high rate of people who report being abducted on a regular basis now, and there's just an incredible number of women who report not only being abducted, but being used basically to breed hybrid children. There's a very interesting account in the book of a woman who had an encounter with a black-eyed kid, and her encounter was a little bit different. And in fact, a lot of people who believe they're hybrids have a different experience. This particular woman, she came home from work, she walked in her house, and she had double French doors on the back of her house in the living room. And when she had walked in the house, she heard someone knocking on the French doors, and her first thought was that her husband had gotten out there somehow and locked himself out, but then she thought, well, that doesn't make any sense. And she walked over to the doors, and when she looked outside, she saw a young boy who was standing on the other side of the door with solid black eyes. Now, this woman had been abducted on numerous occasions during the early part of her life, up until she was, I believe, about 30 years of age, when the abductions stopped. At least her recall of any abductions had stopped. And when she encountered this boy, she reports that she instantly knew that this was her child, that this was a hybrid child that was a result of her being used. Mm-hmm.
Mother's instinct?
Mother's instinct, yeah. And, what happened was she saw this boy, and she suddenly realized, she opened the door, and she realized that standing a little way behind him was a second boy who looked very similar. Now, she didn't feel like that one was her child, just the one that was close to the door. The strange thing is that she opened this door, and she said she just felt, all these emotions running through her. After she opened the door, she heard a noise behind her, and her husband says, very loud, hi, honey. And she just, normal reaction, she kind of whips her head around and looks at him, and then immediately turns back to look outside, and these children are gone. Now, she could barely speak. Her husband, of course, goes outside because she's kind of pointing outside, and they live in a community that's, it's all gated. There's a fence across the backyard. There's not really easy access to this yard. Husband essentially finds nothing. And, she reported afterwards that she absolutely believes that this young boy was essentially hers, and that he was coming to make contact with his mother just to let her know that he was out there.
Okay, now I need to ask you at this point, because I'm sure a lot of people would ask at this point, is there any kind of, like birth defect or genetic defect or any other medical condition that could account for this black-eyed phenomena?
There's not really. There are a couple of medical conditions, aniridia and mydriasis are the two diseases that came up when I spoke to a lot of people with medical background, doctors, and tried to find out if there was anything that could explain this. Now, those two diseases, essentially, they do things One of them is known as the blown pupil. It causes the pupil to enlarge. It does not eliminate the white of the eye. It makes the pupil much larger, though. And essentially, both of these conditions, one, they're very rare. Two, it causes a very high level of sensitivity in the person, so that they have to get treatment for this. They're not going to be out running around trying to show off their odd-looking eyes. It would just be too painful, essentially, for them. And I actually spoke to someone who had one of the conditions, and a young woman, and she told me that, when she had it, she was just hypersensitive to any kind of light, and she certainly wouldn't be walking out around knocking on people's doors. So those are the two big things.
They're showing up during daylight then.
It's most common to hear these encounters later in the day. Now, I think part of the reason for that is that, we get a condition where a lot of people are coming home from work. But there's a whole spectrum of, there's encounters that happen in the morning, there's encounters that happen in the middle of the night. Not a whole lot of a pattern to when these kids are manifesting.
Pardon me. We've been getting a lot of rain down here for this time of year, and it's just off and on. Some nights when it's raining, it gets to me. Some nights when it's not, it don't. And I do apologize for that. But at any rate, I was going to say, so you got these people that are coming in at a certain time of day, but it's still daylight. And if it was a medical condition, they would be sensitive to the light. So it's probably not that. There's got to be another reason that's not accounted for in the medical books for why their eyes are like that. Have there been any known cases of people naturally born that way without any kind of repercussions?
No, not that I have found. There's, I spoke to medical experts about this, and I just wanted to know what would be the result of someone if they were born with a solid black eye, and essentially, they'd be mostly blind because they just wouldn't have, the light wouldn't penetrate into the eye that allows sight. So it would be a very difficult condition, even if someone could be born, or could walk around with that type of eye. Of course, the other thing that people often ask about is, a lot of people believe that, well, it must be drugs. No, medical experts also say that drugs really aren't going to cause that condition. There are some drugs that can alter the eye color somewhat, but it's not going to cause this condition that we're looking at. And there's far too many of these people who are law enforcement, military, medical professionals who are encountering these kids. And these essentially are, these people that are trained to observe. The other question that always comes up is, well, what about hoaxers? I try very carefully to, I really vet these stories before I put them out there and interview the person extensively. And there actually are a lot of stories that you'll find of black-eyed adults. And I think some of those can be explained away as people, trying to pull a prank. There are full-eye contact lenses available. They're a bit expensive. They average around $300 for a pair. They cover the entire eye.
That's a pretty expensive prank.
Yeah, it is. And it's not something that, a 10-year-old kid's going to be running around doing either. So, it's just that I examined every possible avenue, but quite honestly, there are just far too many of these cases at this point to put it down to any kind of rare disease or hoaxing.
Right. And like you say,
worldwide at this point.
A kid's not going to do it, not at $300 a pop, and not everybody can be Richie Rich.
Yeah. Well, that's true, and quite honestly, teenagers, they're simply not going to devote their time to, run into a strange neighborhood, to knock on a door for a quick thrill and run away. I mean, they're more focused with, figuring out teenage romance and texting their friends about the latest, hip-hop song or whatever.
I know my kids are. I can't pull them away from their cell phones.
Exactly.
Well, Have you ever thought about putting out a documentary video about this?
I haven't yet. I've had a couple of people ask about that, quite honestly. The book came out in March, and it's the first book on the topic. There have been a few people out there researching it and writing a few stories here and there, but no one had taken the time to fully research it from all the different angles and historically. So my book, The Black-Eyed Children, just came out in March, and it's the first one to thoroughly cover the topic, and it's been doing very well.
Okay. Okay. Now, I haven't seen any documentaries either, but I would love to see one. I wanted to mention everybody real quick, especially since not everybody's listening at this site, that if you want to call in and ask David questions, that number's 832-632-7904. Now, there is a possibility you may go to voicemail before I get to the phone, because a lot of times if a call comes in when my guest is speaking, I try my best not to interrupt him to pick up the phone, and if I do pick up the phone before he's through, a lot of times I don't tell him or you that he's on the line until he's through in an effort not to interrupt. So, if you pick it up and you hear us talking, just wait until I speak to you, and then you'll know that it's clear that, he's finished with the sentence he was working on at the time. It's not much, but that's pretty much the best I can do, folks. And, don't forget, if you scroll down underneath the description, you'll see the big banner to the Paranormal Summit, and you can click on that and get all the information you want. I don't want to click on it right now because, quite frankly, he's got an audio file from George Norrie on there that would kind of override my show. It's a nice audio, but we don't want it on the show. Now, if you look at the description here, you can see the Black-Eyed Children's, one of the children's face on the picture here. Now, is this an actual picture of a child on this book cover, or is this a computer-generated image?
On the cover of the book, that's a piece of artwork done by my friend Scotty Roberts, who a lot of you might know.
I know him.
Intrepid magazine,
yes.
And Scotty wrote an incredible book himself this year, The Rise and Fall of the Nephilim, and he's a wonderful graphic designer. He designed that cover for me, and I think, I had a couple of concepts for the cover, but I sort of turned it over to him, and he just ran with it, and I think he's done something that, that's an iconic cover. I mean, I can brag about his artwork. That's in the range of the communion cover to me. And people.
I wish I could do artwork like that.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, Scotty's a great guy. He'll be at the Sac UFO Summit this weekend, as a matter of fact, discussing the Nephilim.
Actually, I was just fixing to come to that, mentioning some of the speakers. We're going to have Carrie Cassidy there. We're going to have Jay Winder. Now, a lot of people may not know Carrie. I'm pretty sure everybody does, though. She's in the Project Camelot with Bill Ryan, and they handle a lot of whistleblowers. And then Jay Wigner's going to be there, and he's been working on Kubrick's Odyssey. Norio Hayakawa's going to be there, and he's your leading authority on Area 51. And it's a toss-up probably between him and Anthony and, I don't know, maybe Stanton Freeman as to who's knows the more or the leading authority on Dulcie Base. So. And then there's going to be Scotty Roberts, he was just talking about, the founder of Intrepid magazine. And he's also the author of Rise and Fall of the Nephilim. A very friendly guy, a fantastic author. And they're going to be talking about, I think, their special subject area. So it's going to be many different topics here. We're going to have David here, the guy we're talking to tonight. And actually, we're talking about the Black-Eyed Children tonight, but according to this, you're going to be talking about the Crystal Skulls?
No, actually, at the summit this weekend, I'll be doing a lecture on the Black-Eyed Children.
Oh, okay. It must have been a typo.
Yeah, it might have been. I've been in the field a long time, and so, I speak on a variety of topics, and originally had, I'm not sure how that got scrambled up on there, to tell you the truth. I was at the Alamo UFO conference last month and spoke about the crystal skulls in 2012. So,
and me and Michelle talked about, me and Michelle Maney talked about something similar just the other day.
Right.
But,
yeah, she'll be there this weekend too. We've got some, of course, Anthony will be there, and Maria's done some incredible work, but I tell you, Anthony's really on the cutting edge at this point. The work that guy's doing and the things he's coming up with is just outstanding. And of course, he wrote UFO Highway, and that's an amazing book. Lyle Blackburn, my buddy's a cryptozoologist. He just wrote The Beast of Boggy Creek about the Falk Monster. That's probably the best crypto book out there this year. He'll be there this weekend. And of course, a couple of media personalities, Bill Murphy from Sci-Fi's Fact or Fake and Paul Bradford from GHI will both be there. So it's an amazing lineup. It really is.
Yeah. And then you're also going to have Mel Fabregas, and he's the host of Veritas Radio, which is getting very, very popular more and more as time goes on. Then you got Micah Hanks, he's the author of Magic Mysticism and the Molecule, but he's also the host of the Gralien Report, which is a long-standing, long-running show. He's been on my show 2 or 3 times or more. A fantastic host, a fantastic author. I can speak on his behalf because I know him personally. We're friends. Ed Grimsley is, he's got night vision, goggles or something of that nature to help see UFO wars going on in the night skies. We're going to have Jeffrey Gonzalez, and he does the Fresno night crawlers. I'm not sure what that's all about.
That's right. The Fresno Nightcrawler was a really stunning case. And in fact, Fact or Fate covered that video. It's just a very bizarre video that was caught of this stick-like alien creature, walking across a yard, and it remains unexplained. It's a very intriguing case. If anybody's interested, you can go on and Google it and watch that video. It's very short. This being is just walking across the yard, but there's something just extremely creepy about it and very intriguing. And Jeffrey did a lot of research on that case as well as a lot of other things in the Fresno area. So very powerful lineup there this weekend. Now
that's Fresno, California, am I correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, I had to ask because actually there is a Fresno, Texas. I like to freak out. I always heard of Fresno, California up until 20 years ago when I went to work for Remco TV, and they had a customer in Fresno, Texas, and I'm like, you don't really want me to ride out to this customer's house? And I said, where do you think it is? It's only a 20-minute ride. I said, oh. But yeah,
you can fit about 1,200 states in Texas, so it doesn't surprise me that there's one there.
But yeah, you're right about this, David. There's going to be like a ton of people there. It's you might call it an all-star lineup. I know there's been some people taking off and some people at it as this has gone on, and it just seems like it's getting better and better. And I want to let everybody know also that unless plans change, I'm supposed to be attending via Skype, and me and Jerry Pippin are supposed to be asking questions or interviewing the speakers there via Skype. Now, I'm not sure if Jerry's going to be there live or via Skype, but unless things change, I'm supposed to be there, and I know he's supposed to be there. If you got any questions for any one of these guests, feel free to email me at redneckradioman@comcast.net, and you can also use my feedback form on the site and tell me which guest and what the question is. I'll be more than happy to get that question put out there. And David, I got to ask you also, do you do any, are you going to have any presentations like videos, slides, or anything like that?
Well, I'll have a PowerPoint presentation that goes with this talk on the black-eyed children. I'm often asked if there are any photographs of these kids, and that's one of those things. If you go on the internet, you're going to find literally hundreds of photographs. The issue with that is this is something that's very easy to digitally create. You can essentially take any photograph and black the eyes out. So there's really not a whole lot of point in trying to capture something like that, I think. What I do find intriguing is that there have been a number of cases where someone has encountered these children in an area where there are security cameras. And inevitably, in the cases that I consider valid encounters, something has gone wrong with the security cameras during the period that the children were there. So these cameras have experienced just a glitch, or they were, they lost time, they stopped working. There's a whole variety of things, but it's a very strange aspect of these kids that has started to emerge the more the topic's been researched, and that's this aspect that they seem to interfere with electronics to a certain degree. And that, of course, harkens back to some of the classic Men in Black encounters.
As well as the gray aliens.
As well as the grays, right.
So there could be a connection between all of that. We don't know if it's radiation that's set off in their body that we don't have in ours, or from them hanging around radiation on the UFO, making it on, like electricians. Most of the electricians I've ever met couldn't use a wristwatch because working with all that electricity built up in their body, and even when they were off work, it would make their watches speed up and keep poor time. So who's to say similar phenomena don't happen with these black-eyed children, gray aliens, or Men in Black, or whatever, from being around radiation on a UFO, if there's any?
Exactly. It could be radiation. It could be some kind of frequency that's being transmitted. There's a whole range of possibilities that we just, we don't have the answers for yet. But it's definitely another odd aspect of these encounters to look at a bit more closely.
Yeah, I'd say a lot more closely. Can you kind of give us a summary of your book? And, don't give away the candy store here, but I'm talking about an idea of what somebody can expect when they're reading your book.
Well, what you're going to find is what I think is a pretty thorough examination of all the aspects of these encounters. There are a lot of accounts in the book, and that's one of the main things that people are interested in is hearing the stories of people who have encountered these children and what the encounter has been like. I've done my best to do a couple of things. One is to look at this phenomena in a historical context, and I've went back pre-internet, pre-television, and tried to find sort of the roots of this phenomena to see if it is a much older phenomena, to verify that it's not something that's just simply an urban legend. And I've also examined essentially beings that are related to this phenomena to try to search for some answers. So, there's a chapter in there on the jinn. There's a chapter on the demonic possibilities of these kids. There's a long section on the hybrid question. And then the back section of the book is an examination of some other black-eyed beings or strange-eyed beings from history that share some similarities with these kids. For instance, changelings out of Ireland and parts of Europe. Some tales of black-eyed angels are included in there, and some other things. So it's really what I think is a very thorough examination of the phenomena, and so far people seem to enjoy it.
So it does cover the... pardon me?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so you did cover both the pros and the con, the people for the phenomena being extraterrestrial, as well as for the people who were skeptical of it?
Oh, I covered basically the arguments of the skeptics, and when I first started researching the phenomena, despite hearing Paul's story and being sort of affected by it myself, the first couple of things I wanted to look at was one, to find out if there were more of these cases out there, or if this was just some kind of a one-off experience, and two, to look at the possibilities as far as the medical possibilities. And there's a whole section in the book that goes through the diseases we touched on briefly, the the possibility of drug use, some of the strange things that could alter the eye. You know, it's possible to tattoo the eye, for instance, and a lot of people don't realize that. So it examines that, and it examines the sort of documents this whole dialogue I had with a skeptic who frankly, his arguments became more absurd than the idea of alien hybrids or demons. So, you know, that's covered in the book, and then it, of course, goes on. I don't try to push an agenda as far as what I personally believe that they are. I present all the facts as best that I could for the different possibilities, and I sort of leave that up to people to determine on their own.
Okay. Real quick, why don't you tell my listeners any other events you got coming up in the very near future? Well, I type in the chat room to a new member and a new listener, basically about the player. I use a Windows Media Player, and not everybody can get it to work right away because Windows Media Player requires ActiveX. And it, you know, if it's Internet Explorer, it has a thing to pop up to turn it on. If it's any other browser, you have to download a, you know, plug-in, in other words. And I want to give him some instructions real quick, while you tell everybody what you got coming up.
Sure, I'll bust through a couple of things. First of all, if anyone's interested in the book, you can get it directly from leprechaunpress.com. And if you purchase it from there, those copies are signed, if it makes any difference to people. It's also available on Amazon.com. There's a blog that I have that is twocrowsparanormal.blogspot.com, and that's TWO, spell out the two crows paranormal, blogspot.com. That's a good place to see some of the recent stories that I post. There's also a badge on there from my Facebook page, which is a good way to keep up with me. I invite people to friend me on Facebook. You can follow my Twitter feed, which is Two Crows Para at Twitter. And as far as events, I've got, of course, the huge Sacramento Paranormal Summit this weekend. It's going to be an amazing event. I've got a few other things already verified this year. I'll be at the Wake Up Now conference in Albuquerque, New Mexico. That's in August. And one huge one I've got is I was announced for Scarefest a couple of weeks ago in Lexington, Kentucky, and that is just an amazing event for anyone interested in the paranormal or horror. It's this massive convention with tons of paranormal celebrities and horror movie stars and just a little bit of everything. That runs for, I believe, 3 days. That's the scarefest.com. You can find more information about that. And let's see, a couple of other things coming up that aren't quite verified yet. So those are the big ones I've got coming up at the moment.
Well, that sounds pretty exciting. Now, do you know if Anthony's going to be playing any videos or anything like that during his conference? He may not have time.
Well, I know he's doing a presentation on some of the things that he discovered in Dulce. And I think he's also talking about some of the newer work that he's done. I'm not sure which direction his presentation is going, but he's always got interesting stuff to listen to. So, I mean, you know, all these people, it's, gosh, I mean, if I wasn't speaking, I'd want to be attending because there's just going to be, you know, so much to experience at this event.
If I had transportation, I'd probably load up my wife and drive out there for, I don't know, some kind of vacation or something.
Yeah, it's going to be an incredible event. It really is. And there are still some tickets available, and I know that because, you know, people were so interested, I know day passes were added. So, you know, anybody that's in the area, if you've only got time to jump over for one day, I mean, it's well worth it. You're going to hear somebody that's fascinating to listen to, I guarantee you.
Oh, yeah, I'm quite sure of that. And, you know, as far as I heard, last I heard, the regular tickets were selling out, which would explain the day passes, because there's been a lot of people that did want to attend this. And, in fact, there's other events in the Sacramento area that if people wanted to travel out there to attend this here event, could, you know, stay over a little longer and go do some sightseeing. And I'm not sure exactly what's all there, but we know California, you know, has, for example, amusement parks almost everywhere.
That's right. That's right. But this, you know, this is event is kind of unprecedented. I mean, you look at this panel of speakers, and there's a lot of A-listers there, and that's not typical for an event. You know, a lot of times you'll see one or two stars that are the focus, and then, you know, just some other local things going on. But Anthony really went all out with this, and he's done an amazing job.
And that's on top of all his research on Dulce Base and Project, I want to say it's Leonid or Leopold. I think it's Leonid. Thank you.
Leonid, yeah.
And I'm pretty sure he's going to probably brief everybody on that. And that's, from what I heard, a huge project. They got a lot of underground rail systems and missiles and other things going on. That was China, wasn't it?
Right, there's stuff going on in China, and, you know, people don't realize there's underground bases really all over the world. So, you know, you've got people now like, of course, Norio and Anthony, who are trying to get this information out to the public and let people know there's some very strange things going on out there. And, you know, there's some reason and maybe some sinister reasons that some of these underground bases are being constructed.
Oh, yeah, I have no doubt about that. I mean, okay, I'll grant you. Some of them could be for military purposes. You don't want to let the left hand know what the right hand's doing with other countries, etc. But, I mean, look at the amount of them. I mean, they're like every state, every, you know, town almost you go to. I mean, how many of them do you really need?
Right, right. And, you know, a lot of these bases have been out there for a long time. They've been very hidden and you know, people have been shut down when they've tried to talk about them. And, you know, Anthony's very courageous for what he's doing out there revealing this information.
Yes, he has. And like I say, he's been on my show a couple of times. In fact, you mentioned earlier his book, The UFO Highway. I have really read that book. He did an extensively long interview in it with a Commander X. Now, This guy didn't want to reveal who he was, but a lot of the information he revealed sounded very much on key with a lot of the study that I've done and to similar, you know, things that I've heard from Paul Snyder and Norio and other people, as well as, well, for instance, Joanne Richards. Her husband was supposedly arrested during the war at Dulce between the aliens and the U.S. And he's being kept there because he knows too much. And they don't want him talking. So, yeah, there's, you know, a lot going on in there. And then he goes on to even give more information after the interview with Commander X on the ancient alien phenomena. And he covers some work by Lloyd Pye that is very, very extremely recent and is just now starting to make its way around the web really well about the DNA of, well, the humans, not the Star Child skull that he's been working on for so long, but as humans ourselves, and a gene that we're missing. And David, have you are you current on that by any chance?
Somewhat, and you know, just to clarify, Anthony's contact he refers to as the Colonel. There's another. I just don't want to confuse it because there was another Commander X that put out several books several years ago with some of the material being a little bit questionable. But yeah, there's a lot of strange things happening with this, all these occurrences with the grays and all this, information that's starting to be unearthed in terms of this ancient alien theory. A lot of my research, I'd like to look at what I call paranormal hotspots, areas where there's just an extremely high level of strange activity, not of any one particular type, but where there's a variety. For instance, you know, there are places like Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, that whole area, which is the Uinta Basin. There's so many weird reports out of there, UFOs, haunted places, cryptids, and there are a number of places around the country like that. I've done a lot of research recently in the Superstition Mountains in Arizona, and that's just a very bizarre place, and there are a lot of stories in that area of these beings that live underground. Now, they're described as being reptilian very often, and this is something that is not recent. There are native legends that talk about this region being very dangerous. It's a taboo to some people to even travel in there. Of course, it's very well known to some people as the location of the Lost Dutchman's gold mine. And a lot of strange stories associated with that whole treasure trove that's in there somewhere. But the weird cases that are down there, I've been in contact recently with a woman, and I've been working on her case. She was abducted driving on a highway in Arizona. She saw a craft in the sky with multicolored lights. Her car, all the power went out on her car. She had to just let it coast onto the side of the road. She saw this strange craft in the sky. She blacked out. The next thing she remembered was that her feet were on the ground, but she was being drugged across the desert. She saw a silhouette that she recognized as the Superstition Mountains. They have a very distinctive form. And this creature that was dragging her, she described to me as a reptilian creature. She blacked out a second time, and when she came to again, she was at the entrance to a cave. She believed that she was right up against the superstitions at this point, and there were now two of these creatures holding her. She blacked out again, and the next thing she remembered was regaining consciousness in her car, sitting on the side of the road where it had drifted off. And it's a fairly new case. I'm still, working on a lot of the aspects and trying to find out and determine exactly what happened to this woman. But it shows all of the earmarks of a classic abduction case, except this time it was reptilian beings that took her.
Yeah, and I know that there's more than one type of being. I've heard of also mantises and Nordics and various different kinds out there. Last I heard, the Nordics were some of the more spiritual and more peaceful. That the reptilians were the worst out there of all of them, as far as being downright mean.
Yeah, they seem to be very sinister. And referring again to the superstitions, there are a lot of stories of people disappearing in those mountains and absolutely no trace being found at all of them. There's definitely something going on underground, I'll say. My friend Barry Fitzgerald, some people will know him from Ghost Hunters International. He has a book coming out this year that specifically looks at this whole question of exactly what's going on in these caves and tunnels, because there are countless stories from all over the world of people who go to these caves and they hear, whispering, or they hear people calling their name. I had a very strange case of it, again, in the superstitions, about a woman who basically was lured into a cave because she heard someone calling her name. And it was in the darkness of the cave, but it was familiar, and it was, it's kind of strange. It harkens almost back to, the classic myth of the siren song, or something trying to lure you in. And, it really makes you question exactly what has happened to a lot of these people that have disappeared just simply walking or hiking in the superstitions. Why has no trace been found?
Which is a good question. And actually, I've also, you got to ask about biblical references. I mean, Satan and the serpent, they're reptiles. Well, okay, the serpent is. A dragon has been considered a reptile. Draco, the constellation, is the serpent's constellation. Is there a connection between all this?
Right, exactly, and you'll find that. Yeah, I feel like I've done an hour-long infomercial. I'm not overwhelming people, but I got to bring this right back around. My buddy Scotty Roberts is actually doing a follow-up to his Nephilim book, and it's on reptilians. And he and I were just speaking about this recently, because if you look at cultures all over the world, there is this reptilian or serpent symbology. You know, it's in India with the Nagas. It's in classical Norse myth talks about the Midgard serpent. So it's a recurring theme in cultures everywhere. So
the only thing different is some cultures are good, some cultures are evil.
Exactly. Well, and they always seem to have something that links to either hidden or forbidden knowledge.
Yep.
So, that's a big question, exactly, what's the true nature of that? And, what's the source of all those myths?
Well, one thing we can show... Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to add, it's definitely there. It seems to be in everybody's genetic memory.
Yeah, and I've heard that before, and there's probably a lot of truth in that. Might be right on key. I was going to say one thing is definitely certain with the kind of speakers that's going to be at this conference, the wide variety of topics. I don't see how a person can go there and not learn something new. So, this sounds like it's going to be a very exciting event, a very educational event, and I think people who do attend to this is going to be glad that they did. Remember that the website URL is www.sacufocon.com. That's con.com, C-O-M. So it can be kind of confusing. Or you can just click on the banner right there on the page. It'll take you right to it. Also, to get to David's website, that's, well, it's not his site, but it's a, review done by Mysterious Universe on his book, mysteriousnuniverse.org, /2012, /05, /the-black-eyed-children-reviewed, /. You could also click the link right under his picture and book cover that I have right there. And you can also get his book by clicking on the link right underneath his description that I got there. And tomorrow I'll be moving this to the archives along with yesterday's show that I'm late moving because of certain reasons I don't want to go into. But at any rate, they will both be in the archive, and I'll be putting the new show for this Saturday up, and we can discuss that in just a minute. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this show for tonight. David, it's really been a pleasure having you here. You're a very, interesting guest. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I thought we did rather well, to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Royce. It's been great being on.
And I want to stay in touch with you, and I'd love to have you back when things calm down and, you got a chance to maybe just sit down and talk about, your book alone and maybe go into detail with it. Or you got something new? You're going to be doing a new book, aren't you, in the future, or no?
Yeah, I've got a book another book that'll be out this year. It's actually on tulpas and thought forms. That'll probably be out late summer, early fall.
I've got to have you back for that. Got to have you back for that. That just sounds very interesting.
I'll keep you posted. I'll be glad to come back on anytime.
Okay, Doug. Well, I'm going to go ahead and call this show a wrap then. Thank you very much for coming. It's been a pleasure to have you. And I hope to see you again in the very near future. And you have a good, I guess today, since we're not on the weekend yet.
That's right. Well, thanks a lot, Ross. You have a good night.
You too now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, everybody, real quick want to thank everybody for coming, taking part in the show. I couldn't have a show without my listeners any more than I could have one without my guests. I'm not one to want to sit here and just talk to the air. Not my first thing to do. So I want to thank you guys for coming. I want to thank you for being in chat. The ones that wasn't in chat, I still want to thank you for coming and listening. Y'all are wonderful folks. Real quick, let me remind you guys that my next show will be this Saturday at 1 p.m. And I'm going to have a psychic this Saturday named Nancy Meyer, who has been on TV that's done detective work. She's been a psychic detective and has worked on, I want to say murder cases, but I don't have her description right in front of me, but I'm pretty sure she has. So please join us Saturday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, for that show. Don't forget to stop by World UFO Today. The link's in the upper right-hand corner. World UFO Day is coming up July the 2nd, so you might want to learn more about that. Don't forget to click on my friends' links. There are links to, to United Paranormal International, a fantastic social network, and the Supernatural Forum. There's also a link to Alien and UFO Network, but their site's down right now, and I don't know when they're going to be back up. And don't forget to click on Radio Favorites. I've got some banners linked to 4 different shows there that I recommend. UKPN Radio with Gary Brown, Jim Harold at jimharold.com, The Gralien Report with Micah Hanks, and Ohio Exopolitics by Mike Snyder. All of them great shows, great hosts. I think you'll enjoy them if you want to check them out. And until the next time, I want to leave that with you right where it's at and say thank you very much. And y'all have a great night, and I'll see you Saturday. Bye-bye.